Good evening, everybody. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our Hurricane Outlook and Discussion for Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. Sorry for the late upload, and we're also going to make this a short one since it's late in the evening, but I still wanted to get something out there. I was busy with school, of course, today, so that's why I wasn't able to post earlier. However, at least I'm still able to post, and that's my goal for today, even if it's short, which we'll try to make this. And even though we're going to make this short, we still have a lot to talk about. Multiple storms in the Pacific. One is actually a tropical storm. As you can see, we have Tropical Storm Blas. No threat to land is expected, but this could actually become a low to moderate hurricane. We'll review that in a little bit. And then, of course, the Atlantic area of interest, which is actually, as of the latest situation, is now designated 93L. So that means even more of a situation to worry, or to watch, of course, not worry, because we can't do that. And then we also have 93. So we have a lot to go over, and we're going to go over it very quickly. So let's get right into it. First of all, the area in the Atlantic, 93L, low. The chances for this forming in the next 48 hours is still low, roughly around 30 or so percent. It really depends on if this stays offshore, and that's a big if, because a lot of the models take this in over Central America and then don't really have this re-emerging until it gets to the northwestern Caribbean near the Yucatan Peninsula. But a lot of them are actually kind of sold on this, trying to get going a little bit more once this gets over here and towards the Bay of Campeche and the southern Gulf of Mexico. So we'll really have to see what exactly happens. But because of that, there's a 40% chance in the next 5 days. So that's 93L. Tropical Storm Blast in the Pacific, which is new as of today. Of course, we saw 92E get very organized overnight last night, and then we saw this become a tropical storm today, 50 miles per hour, 1,000 millibars, and it's moving very slowly north at 5 miles per hour. It's then expected to start taking a more westerly, west-northwesterly, I guess, trajectory, and then it'll avoid the coast of Mexico. Of course, you got to watch about rip currents, so that will always be a threat. But then we got this storm right here. This is 93. This has a 50-50 shot in the next 48 hours, the next 5 days. Models do develop this too. And it's funny because they actually do a sort of Fujiwara effect, which is basically storms rotating around each other if they're in a close enough vicinity. And that's especially because of this CAG sort of thing that we're seeing storms both develop on both sides of the Atlantic. And there's actually talk about whether or not that might actually help 93L kind of stay off the coast of Central America and allow it to develop even further. But that's a big if. Once again, really quickly on Tropical Storm Blas, satellite imagery looking pretty good. It has that shrimp look, as I like to say, curving convective bands going into the center. The center, although, is actually kind of small, so it really does and can fluctuate very rapidly, and especially when we get this low, that especially with the small level circulation like this has, might really do interesting things. Of course, the dry air and the lower water temperatures, though, are actually not far behind, or not far ahead, I should say, from this. So development really should only be for a short period of time. Up until Friday, though, the National Hurricane Center has this becoming a hurricane. It actually becomes a hurricane tomorrow, according to the National Hurricane Center advisory. And I think the peak is roughly 80 or 85 miles per hour. I haven't checked, but something like that. But the bottom line is a Category 1 hurricane. Won't be anything too strong, but of course a hurricane to talk about. This is 93E. Of course, convection dying off as we get into the D-min period, the diurnal minimum period, where the atmosphere is producing the least convection. Over water, over land, you could see a lot of convection blowing up because it's the land diurnal maximum, so a lot of convective forcing is over land right now. But of course, tomorrow morning when diurnal maximum comes over the ocean, we should see both this and even 93L, which is what we have in the Atlantic here. And this is actually kind of interesting. You do notice how there's a very, very potent area, albeit small, very potent area of continuous vorticity and a very strong MLC, and there's even some indications that there is a low-level center with this, but it really depends on how it gets itself together. We'll see how during a maximum over water helps this develop into a storm, and we'll just really have to see how things fare out, because especially if this stays over water, which is actually a very big controversy on the models. A lot of them actually do have this staying roughly near the coast of Nicaragua. The consensus is that this will go inland slightly over the next 24 hours as this gets closer to the coast. But then a lot of models then start taking this northward, and then on a more northwesterly track, have most of the models have this decently into the Gulf of Honduras and the Yucatan Peninsula, where we could see this have the best chance to develop. And then a lot of them take this into the Bay of Campeche, where things, of course, will probably be even better to develop than both of the areas right here. But it really depends if this actually tries to spin up very small. There's a lot of talk about a very vigorous MLC, and Hurricane Man talks about that. He mentions the radar loop that's off the coast of Costa Rica, 93L just off the coast, trying to wrap those cirrus clouds before getting to the Gulf of Honduras, where we could see a more organized system. But the real big thing that I would like to mention is that this is actually a very small system in terms of its actual area. And that's funny because the models also predicted that this would be a very strong storm just south in the southern Caribbean, just off the coast of Central America. So it really depends on if it takes advantage of that to spin up into a small storm before it impacts um, um, Central America. If it does, of course, that's still up for debate. Although it's very likely to, although if this does actually develop into a decent system, and of course the Fujiwara effect, like we talked about, maybe this will have a small chance of staying offshore. And that's a big if, because if it does manage to stay offshore and really slowly try to get itself together, it might not seem like it right now, especially when you see these upper level winds cutting across just to the north of it. But we will actually begin to see some more favorable conditions develop over the Caribbean associated with 93L. So it'll really be important to see whether or not this does stay over water to take advantage of it. The latest GFS you do see takes us basically right between the coast, and within the next 12 to 24 hours, this does actually really strongly spin this up into a very decent storm just right by the coast. Really drives this very near the coast of Nicaragua, but it really depends on exactly what the ridge does, and of course the influence from 93E, which by this time on the GFS is already a storm, and basically is already a storm by the time we get to the 48-hour time period. So the next 2 days is to basically develop, and then that's when 93L is basically riding a coast of Costa Rica, then Nicaragua, and then they have this slingshotting into the Gulf of Honduras, where it actually does become a lot more of a more consolidated and a larger storm too. And then they have this going over the Yucatan and then developing, consolidating a little bit more too over the Bay of Campeche, where by the time we get to the 120-hour time period, it's then moving over Mexico, and of course the ridge to the north, which you can very clearly see here on the modeling, will keep this south of the Gulf Coast, and we shouldn't see a threat to the Gulf Coast, but of course to Central America, Mexico, huge rainmaker, and also possible potential tropical cyclone impacts. Not looking like a very intense storm, as it's June, of course, won't be an intense storm, but nonetheless something to keep monitoring, and we'll certainly do that here. But I just really wanted to make this a quick video, just going on things when it comes to the Atlantic. There is certainly still a lot more we could talk about, but I think this is just a baseline to know for what the general idea for all these storms are. Of course, we'll see how 93L is tomorrow morning, if it's gotten better organized or not. I'll have a video discussion tomorrow morning on 93L. Maybe I'll try to make it tomorrow morning. Maybe I'll wait till the afternoon. Just depends. I do got testing that I need to do tomorrow for school, so I won't really have a chance in the noon time period, but roughly around 3 or 4 I should be able to. But the testing isn't really till 11:30 or so, maybe I will be able to get some time beforehand to make a video discussion on 93 LLC. But either way, if you want to stay tuned and see whether or not I do so, please subscribe, like the video. Really helps the channel grow, and I will really appreciate too, so we can help grow the channel and I can get the word out to the tropics on what's going on every day, like I'm doing now. And we really need a lot of people to watch, of course, from the really benefit bringing the information to people, which is what I'm here for. So that's why I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe, and like, and of course just help the channel grow. And we'll see. We'll see, of course, what happens. We're really watching 93O, and we'll see if it does try to spin up into a storm, and of course how Blas in the Eastern Pacific fares out too. We'll just have to see. All right, but with that being said, I'm going to close it off for this discussion. Everyone have a safe night. We'll see you tomorrow for tomorrow's discussion. Peace.